Today's an important day as we start Keys to Freedom. Our staff has prayed for months and months and months for you and for what the Lord is doing. I like the rain as favor. That's good. I like that. I want to ask you to do something. This next image is kind of symbolic to me that you have a network. Jesus told us that to let our lights shine before men, right? Before mankind. And you've got a network around you. You got people that you work with. You got friends, classmates. You got people that live and operate near you. And I'm going to ask you to do something, and I'm going to ask you to take it seriously. I'm going to ask you not to broadcast it on Facebook, actually to ask the Lord, who do I touch that needs Jesus? Who does my life touch at work, school, friend in the community, PTO, somebody that's a stay-at-home mom, a salesman that works with me? Who do I touch that needs Jesus? And I'm going to ask you to invite them, because let me tell you what we're going to be dealing with over the next many weeks. We're going to be dealing with honesty. Keys to Freedom is a toolbox. It's a toolbox. It's a toolbox that helps you when you tackle real life issues in your mind, your heart, your family, your job, your money, your debt, your 401k, when you have a sales problem in your job, or you have a problem on your sales team, or something going on in HR, or maybe you've got something going on with your teenager or with your middle schooler. It's a toolbox, and to employ some real tools. So let me give you a roadmap of how that's going to look. This is the map. So we're going to start with Keys to Freedom. That's going to take us about 8 weeks. And then after that, we're going to go into what I'm just going to call tools. I don't really know what I'm going to call it officially. But we're going to talk about freedom. We're going to talk about your authority in Christ. We're going to talk about what it means to follow the Lord with biblical authority and the real keys that you have to navigate life. And then out of that, when we go into this next tools series, we're going to talk about what are some practical tools that you can experience victory, real honest victory in life. Because Jesus said that if you know the truth will set you free. Paul said in Galatians, it is for freedom that Christ set you free. So we're going to talk about real tools to help you think how to hear God. We're going to talk about what the church is and how that's a tool. We're going to talk about some practical tools to help you live free and stay free. And then after that, I don't know how long it's going to take. It's going to be a lot of study on my part. But we're going to take as long as it takes to do an extended series on what is a church. What is a church? It's been a long time since I've covered a series like that. What does a church do and what does it not do, right? Because a lot of times our frustration with church is, let me tell you where it stems from. It stems from the fact, I can illustrate it to you. If you get a hammer and try to make an omelet, it ain't going to go well for you, right? If you take a hammer and try to make an omelet, it's going to be hard. It really wasn't designed to do that. You can take a shovel. You ever try to pound a nail with a shovel? It doesn't go. You can do it. It just doesn't usually turn out the way you wanted it to. Sometimes our frustration with church and disillusionment with church is because we are looking to something that it wasn't designed to do. We're going to talk about what a church is and what a church isn't, and how that plays into us. So that's where we're going to go in the next 6 months or so. I want to start by talking to you about this morning about a Waverly workday. We have coming up on, I think, a week from Monday. Is that right, Kim? A week from Monday, a week from tomorrow, we're going to have a work day with the tornado victims and flood victims in Waverly. Go to our website and you can learn all about that and sign up. But let me tell you why that matters and why I bring that up today. Disaster relief, I'll never forget a conversation that I had about disaster relief. I was probably 24, 25, 26 years old. And I'm having to preach above that rain today, so I may become a shouting preacher. And if that's the case, don't take that as I'm mad. I'm just getting above the favor. How about that? Right? I want to get above the favor. There's a new phrase. That's a new T-shirt. We're going to get above the favor and under it too. I had this conversation. I was talking with, there was a time in my life where I worked with a lot of state conventions. I think I counted one time 13, 14 different Baptist conventions: New England, Mississippi, Arkansas, Alaska, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina. A lot of those places would bring me in to work with pastors on reaching men. And I was sitting down one time with Don Gann at this Mississippi convention many, many years ago, and he told me a story about a man that was brand new to Christ, and he was doing disaster relief. He was actually on a chainsaw crew working in Katrina. So that'd be around 05, 06, somewhere in that time. And he said, this guy comes up to me, and I didn't know him because, I mean, he was from a church that, wasn't my church, but he was on disaster relief mission. And he walked up to me and he said, hey, I'm new to Christ, and I've been in Christ about 2 years. And he said, I want you to know that disaster relief changed my life. And he said, oh, really? What do you mean? And he thought he meant something like, it changed me forever. He said, no. He said, it's the reason that I'm in church today. He said, what do you mean? And he said, they're standing there in chainsaw and sawdust and smell like gas and oil. And he said, man, listen, I came to Jesus about 2 years ago. He said, I started going to church, and after about 6 months in my little church, they made me a deacon, which they'll do that in churches. You got to watch them sometimes, He said, I guess they needed people, and I said, sure, I'll help. And he said, I went to everything that the church did for about 18 months. And he said, I turned to my wife one night when we were sitting on the couch, and I said to her, if this is all there is to Christianity, I've made a mistake. This woman had been praying for her husband to be saved for 15, 20 years. If this is all there is to Christianity, I've made a mistake. And she said, honey, what are you talking about? He said, I just can't imagine that the end goal of this whole thing is to go to church every Sunday and just do that till Jesus comes. I just can't imagine that singing songs and giving a tithe and going to a Bible study and coming to church every Sunday, if this is all there is to it, I don't know that I made a good decision. He said, and then I went on disaster relief, and I began to do the things that I heard that you can do. I began to go on mission, and I found a purpose with hurting people, and I began to look into their eyes and tell them that Jesus loved them, and I began to look into their eyes and talk to them about things that were real, and I saw the power of God, and it began to work, and it began to make sense to me. And he wasn't knocking the church. He was just saying, if attending church is all there is to Christianity, I don't think I made the right decision. And I think he's right. I want to introduce you to a man named John Wimber. Many of you would not know him. I would be shocked if you did. A few of you have heard his name, very few. John Wimber was the founder of the Vineyard movement. There's a Vineyard church right here in Franklin. John Stearns is the pastor, and if you ever leave ClearView, I would say go to John's place. And that's not going to be any better. He's not near as good of a preacher as I am, and make sure you tell John I said that if you leave ClearView. But know that John is filled with the Holy Spirit, and I love John, and he's a good man, he's got a good wife, and he's been there 20 years. He's planted Vineyard Fellowship. He's an amazing man of God. So Vineyard Fellowship came out of John Wimber. John Wimber got radically saved in California. And he got radically saved. And I'm going to play for you a 3-minute clip of a famous phrase that John Wimber used to use. The Vineyard became a global movement. Wimber lived for the devil, man. I mean, he lived for the devil for many years. And he's open about that. And he's a happy guy. But he talks about... There was a famous time where he doesn't go into it here, but I heard John talk. He's in heaven now. I heard John talk about a time that when he was new in Christ and he walked up to his pastor and he said, when do we do the Jesus stuff? He said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I'm new to Christ, and I've been reading about angels, and I've been reading about people laying hands on the sick, and I've been reading about people praying over things and being delivered from sin. And I'm just saying, I've been going to this church like 6 months, and we don't ever do that. When do we do that? See, when you're new to Christ, you don't know there are boundaries you don't talk about with pastors. You know, you don't know that those aren't things you don't discuss, right? So this is the clip. I want you to listen to it. It's got a little sound effects on it.
As I read the New Testament, I fell in love with Jesus. Didn't you? I liked him. I liked what he was like. I liked the things he did. I liked the things he said. Didn't you like those things? I thought that stuff was hot. I liked it when he multiplied the bread. Did you like that one? Huh? How about it? Did you like that? And the fishes, you know, the sardines. I always picture sardines. I like that stuff. I like all that stuff, you know. I liked it when he went by the fig tree and said, you know, and it died. Can you picture him doing that? I like all that stuff. I like it. I remember last night, come forth. That's a biggie, you know. I mean, that's hot. There's not many guys doing that come forth thing, you know, telling anybody to come up from the dead. I like all that stuff. And when I became a Christian, I thought that's what I was going to do. I spent several weeks reading the New Testament and talking with these people, and I thought, this is great. You know, I'm going to join up. I want to do this stuff. And so I remember the frustration of attending church the first few times. You know what I thought they did at church? I thought that people gathered at the church, had a good time together, sort of divvied up the land, and then everybody went out and healed a few, and cast out a few demons, and won a few people to Christ before lunch. And so the first few times I went to church, I went prepared with the idea that we're going to, you know, I'm going to take Anaheim. I want to go to Anaheim, you know, the deepest, darkest pagan Anaheim. Over there by Disneyland. That's where I want to go, because that's where I was raised. And when they didn't do it, I was disappointed. And I remember one day asking a guy about it. I said, well, when do we go out and do it? He said, what? I said, when do we go out and do it? He says, oh, you don't have to do it. You just have to believe it was done once. Now, that's pathetic, isn't it? I found out over the next year or two that we cried about it, we sang about it, we preached about it, we prayed over it, we gave to it, but we never did it. We never got to go do the things that Jesus did. And I grew disillusioned in the process. Now, you know, when I worked for the devil, he let me do his stuff. Didn't he let you do his stuff? He let me do his stuff. But when I came to work for Jesus, they didn't want to let me do his stuff. And to tell you the truth, I joined up to do the stuff. Did you? You see, it's doing the stuff that's going to change the world. It's not knowing it was done once. It's not knowing that it's important. It's doing it that's going to change the world. Somewhere, someplace, somebody's got to start believing this book and acting on it. And I figure it might as well be us. We're qualified, and we understand that it can be done.
I could stop, but I'm not. Somewhere, somebody's got to do the stuff. A.W. Tozier said it this way. I love Tozier. He's in heaven too. He said, today the church is satisfied with the God of history, with the Christ of history. We have God in history and the Christ in history, but we do not have the God in living personal experience. That is why we are so dissatisfied and so empty and have so little vibrant joy in the things of God. Tozier said that in the 60s. In the 60s. I think what happens is, you know, when you read the New Testament, we sign up to be kingdom agents. We're called to be kingdom agents. We're called to do the stuff. We're called to do the things Jesus told us to do. And so when we don't do those things, then we do become disillusioned. And so if you look, and that's what Keys to Freedom is about. Keys to Freedom is about us finding the tools to go out and experience the joy of God, the vibrancy of God. And so when I look across the landscape of American evangelicalism that I've been a part of now for 30 years, the thing that I find is that so much of what we see in our modern day churches is an Americanized version of a gospel. It's an Americanized version. It's what I call retail Christianity. I think that's going to be a title to a book one day. I think if I wrote it right now, it would just be a real rant. And I don't think that publishers would like it, so they probably wouldn't publish it. So, but I want my words to be good. But I've got a real burden about retail Christianity and what it's done to our world, because I think it's done a lot to the American church. I really do, because we think that if in the world of America, if it's bigger, it's got to be better, right? I mean, if it's bigger, it's got to be better. Well, if that's how we're going to measure churches and church health, then really, if God is into big and bigger is always better, then all of our businesses and all of our churches, we need to adopt the same model of the pornography industry, because it's huge. We need to adopt the practices of industries that know how to scale. Because if bigger's better, then bigger is what we need to pursue. But I'm here to tell you, friend, bigger has never been on the heart of God. Purity has. Holiness has. And we really just don't talk a whole lot about that anymore, ever, among God's people. We just really don't. We don't talk about what it means to live free and be free and pursue the righteousness and things of God. And so that's what Keys to Freedom is about. And the reason that Tozier and Wimber and those guys always resonated with me, because honestly, I felt the same way. I came to Christ a little bit later than most people do. I wasn't a kid. I was a teenager. I was right about to be 18 years old. And I began to ask myself the very same things that guy in disaster relief asked himself. After a couple of years, I didn't know how to say it, and I certainly didn't say it to my pastor. I was afraid he might think I was a bad guy. I didn't say it to my student pastor. I was afraid he might thought that I was arrogant. I really didn't know what I was feeling, but looking back on it, what I was feeling was exactly what John Wimber said and exactly what Tozier said, and it was exactly what they felt. That guy standing there with a chainsaw that day in Mississippi doing Katrina work saying, why don't we do the things that I read about in there? I don't get it. Where did all that go? Well, I don't think it went anywhere. I think we just don't do it. And I think we don't do it because sometimes we don't believe it. We don't believe it or we don't practice it because it's honestly just hard. It's harder to pursue freedom. It really is. Freedom, Keys to Freedom is about a toolbox for life. And so I can tell you that what we're experiencing in modern day evangelicalism for me as a pastor is I want to tell this to you, friends, and I want you to listen to me. And if you don't hear anything else I say today, believe this. There is a different life available to you if you want it. There's a different life available to you if you want it. There is a spirit option out there, and it's not spooky and it's not weird. The Holy Spirit isn't weird. People are weird. Holy Spirit's not weird. Holy Spirit is the norm of Christianity. The devil has convinced us to make the Holy Spirit weird. Holy Spirit's not weird. And by the way, Holy Spirit's not afraid about what you think about him either. He's not bound to your belief system of him. But I'm telling you, friends, there's a different life out there if you want it. You see, Colossians 1 tells me this. Colossians 1 says, "For he has rescued us from the kingdom of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his dear Son." That is, we were once one way, and his grace and his radical saving power delivered me, and it transferred me out of one world, and it put me in another world. And so what I'm going to say to you, friend, there's a different world out there. And I'm going to say it to you this way. God has called you to live beyond what you came out of. Do you hear me? God has called you to live. I know that's ending a sentence with a preposition, and for a guy that writes stuff, it's very hard for me to do that, but I did it. Because it works better. I'm telling you, God has called you to live beyond what you came out of. See, the reason that so many people in churches across America, the reason that so many people are disenfranchised with church and disenfranchised with the things of God is because they got saved in their spirit. Let me tell you what I mean by that. They came to Jesus, they walked an aisle, or they filled out a card, or they prayed a prayer at Fuge, or they did something like that, and it was very real. And Jesus did save them. But that's where it stopped. I mean, right there was where it stopped, not where it began. Right there was the end game. And I will tell you, honestly, that's not so much your fault as it is guys like my fault. Because what we've sold, especially as Baptists, what we've sold people for 15, 20, 40, 50, 60, 80, 90 years is that the whole point of everything was to walk an aisle and be saved. That's what we told them. So why are we shocked that our churches are full of people that walked aisles and did exactly what we asked them to do, when we could have told them, no, that is first base? One time somebody asked a famous hitter, and I can't remember his name, about Pete Rose. This isn't a knock on Pete Rose. But he asked him, what do you think about Pete Rose's record? And the guy said, I never wanted to spend a career hitting singles. Y'all can fight that out in baseball historians for all that you want, but his point was the goal is to score. I want to score. I want to touch home plate. So I think what's happened in a lot of our churches is the reason that people got saved, but they haven't been sanctified so much, is because if getting saved is the end goal, friends, then the moment you get saved, you need to go straight to heaven. But I haven't checked with anybody else but me, but that hadn't happened to me yet. So the goal is for me to be saved, and that is for me to be saved and to start a journey to live beyond what I could ever live on my own. See, there's a different life out there waiting for you, friend. There's a different life out there waiting for you. So we're going to look in Hosea this morning. It's a book you may not have ever even heard of. I love Hosea. I've studied him for years. And this is the passage that God brought to my mind over and over again. It's in the Old Testament. Okay, it's right before the book of Joel. It's kind of right before you get to the New Testament. If you started at Matthew and just go back to the left, you're going to hit Hosea. He's right in there with Daniel. So Hosea chapter 14. Let me give you the backstory really quick. Hosea chapter 14 is a really interesting chapter because Hosea was a prophet. And he was a prophet that God told him to do something very, very weird. If you read Hosea, what you find is that Hosea was told by God to go and marry a prostitute. Literally. God told him, Hosea, your wife I need you to marry this lady named Gomer. That's a bad start if you met a Gomer. You know, if you married a woman named Gomer and she's a prostitute, and I want you to marry her because this is going to be a picture of my people. They have prostituted themselves. They've chased the world. My people have left me. And so the picture that you get of God in the book of Hosea is not this autocrat, dictator God who is hammering people down from on high. That's not the picture of Hosea at all, actually. The picture of God in Hosea is a husband whose wife has left him for another man. Actually, for a whole lot of other men. It's the picture of a father who is watching his family and his kids implode. You ever watched that happen? You ever seen any of your friends go through a season where their kids literally just derail? And the anguish those parents face? The picture you see of Hosea is a God that is brokenhearted over his people that have chosen something else. There is no more severe rejection than being cheated on. And that's the picture. So Hosea 14 is the final chapter where the people finally decide, I've had enough and I'm going to repent. It's the victory chapter. So let's read it. And I'm going to break it down for you. So this is what is said. Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Take words with you. I'm going to explain that in a minute. Take words with you and return to the Lord. Say to him, take away all iniquity and receive us graciously. We want to come back. We want to come home, that we may present the fruit of our lips. Very important verse right here, verse 3. Assyria will not save us. We will not ride on horses, nor will we say again, our God, to the work of our hands. For in you the orphan finds mercy. I will heal their apostasy. Let me tell you what apostasy means. If you grew up in church, some of you did, some of you didn't. There's a big word we use for that many times. It's called backsliding. Take off the G if you're in the South. Backsliding. That's what apostasy means. I will heal their apostasy, verse 4, and I will love them freely, for my anger has turned away from them. And I will be like the dew to Israel, that is like rain that you hear right now. I'll be like irrigation to Israel. He will be the blossom like the lily, and he will take root in the cedars of Lebanon. That's a metaphor for strength. His shoots will sprout, and his beauty will be like the olive tree, and his fragrance like the cedars of Lebanon. And those who live in his shadow will again rise and raise grain, and they will blossom like the vine. His renown will be like the wine of Lebanon. O Ephraim, what more have I to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after you. It is me, he's saying. It's me that provides your strength, not the world. I am like the luxuriant cypress, and from me comes your fruit, not from the work of your hands. Verse 9, whoever is wise, let him understand these things, and whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the righteous will walk in them, but transgressors will stumble in them. I think the first question, I think Hosea 14 has a lot to share with us about modern day life. I really do. I think Hosea 14 has a lot to say to those of us in Williamson County. I really do. I think Hosea 14 has a lot to say to us in modern day churches. I really do. And the first question, I think, we can learn a couple of key truths from Hosea. And I think the first question we have to ask, though, is how did we get here? How did we get into a place where we are the land? One church growth guru one time said many years ago in an article I read, he said, if the American church has taught us anything, it's taught us that we can be the land of 1 million churches and still lose our culture. How did we get here? How did we get to this place? Well, how did Israel get there? Why is it that they were told to return to the Lord? Because of their iniquity. When you go through Keys to Freedom, you're going to see, by the way, we've got books out there for you. If you don't have to be in a group for that, you can come and take it. We're going to walk through it. So even if you're not doing it in your group, we're going to do it in here together. And you're going to see this image that's played out in Keys to Freedom of a tree, okay? You're going to see this a lot. And this tree has 3 basic levels. Behaviors are often referred to as leaves. Beliefs are referred to as the trunk or the branches. And the source, well, that's the root system. You see, so often what we do is we look at the branches of behavior. We want to do better. God, help me do better with my anger. God, I really don't need to lust as much as I do, and so those are leaves. God, I wish I wasn't quite so materialistic sometimes, and I'm greedy about that. God, I really feel like if I could get a better job, I've always seemed to be one. If I could just climb up the ladder a little bit, I would have some worth. You know, God, if I just found the right boyfriend, maybe, just maybe, if somebody would love me, then maybe, just maybe, my life would have significance. You know, I didn't grow up with a lot of stuff. I grew up in a place where My family didn't come from much, and so if I could just find a way to have a bigger home, I would finally have arrived. You see, those are behaviors that manifest themselves. And those behaviors, the leaf is only a product of the branch, but the branch is always a product of the root system. And so often, what we tackle in discipleship in our minds is we tackle behaviors. And I'm telling you, friend, you can shave that tree all day long of those leaves, and those leaves are coming back. Those leaves are coming back until you go after the root of what is causing your self-worth issues. Until you go after the root of why you think you need a better job to make you feel significant. Until you go after the root system, nothing's going to change until you go after the root system. Keys to Freedom is about you getting honest with God and looking at your root system. And let me tell you something, in case you didn't know, me and you and all of us, we have root problems. All of us. And I say that with you, man. I'm not, I could read off for you a long list of some bad roots. I don't want to. It's way easier to talk about your roots, not mine. I'm going to talk about yours, not mine. All for 8 weeks, I'm going to talk about your roots, not my roots. It's just way easier on me. I like it better. Right? I want to tell you something. I went through the first chapter of Keys to Freedom, and I put it down, and I said, this is not going to be fun. I did. Honest truth, in my office. I told Shane Pass the next day, I said, hey, I don't really like this so far. He said, me either. He said, all the stuff comes out. I said, oh yeah, all the stuff comes out. So what can we learn from the people of God in Hosea? We learn that the tree has a root. Return, O Israel, to the Lord your God, for you have stumbled because of your iniquity. Let me tell you why that matters. Iniquity matters because what he's getting at is, let me tell you, this is really important stuff. You're taking notes, take this down. We focus a lot on behaviors, and the Bible uses a word called sin. And sin is basically an act of the will. Sin means that you did something that you shouldn't have done. But there's another word the Bible uses for the sin nature, and it's called iniquity. And iniquity is not a behavior. Iniquity is a condition. Iniquity is a root. And until you deal with that iniquity, you're never going to tackle the behavior systems that come out of it all. So how did they do it? How did they overcome this in Hosea? Well, I want to read to you a verse 3. I put it on the screen in case you didn't bring your Bible. Because this is a key verse, but I don't really know that you're going to understand what he means by it, so I'm going to unpack it for you today. They said, Assyria will not save us, and we will not ride on horses, nor will we say again, our God, to the work of our hands. That's a very, very important turning point for the people of Israel. It's a very important turning point for the people of God, because they finally came to the conclusion that governing their own lives and living their own way wasn't doing for them what they hoped it would do. You see, God is a lover of your soul, but he's a jealous lover. And he won't share the covenant. He won't. He won't share the marriage covenant. Oh, he's begging for him to come home, but he's saying, when you come home, you're not leaving again. You're coming home. You got to choose. You want them or you want me? So how do we end up doing that? How do we end up in this place where our root system gets really twisted up? I'll tell you a couple of key ways we do it. I say we stray from God. We stray from God when we trust the temporary to give us the permanent. See, that's what they meant by Assyria. They were looking to Assyria, another country, for military strength and provision. We stray from God when we think that we're going to find life in the temporary when it only comes from the eternal. You with me? That's what happened. I'll say another way. We stray from God when we take matters into our own hands. See, that's what the people had done. They had become their own God. Let's look at the verse again. It says, Assyria will not save us. We will not ride on horses. They were trusting, that's a metaphor for military might. So here's what I did for you this morning. I took a little liberty. That verse sounds dated. It sounds like you need to know a whole lot of Old Testament history to understand it. So I'm going to fast track this thing, and I'm going to put this in. Now, by the way, what I'm about to read to you is not in the Bible. It's just in the book of Jason. Okay, that's a good book too. But I chose to put this in some modern American ways that you could understand that statement. Forgive us, God, for believing a political party will restore our nation. That's one way of saying it. Assyria won't save it. They were looking to a political party. Oh God, if we could just get the right president, or if we could just get our people to vote the right way, it'll all be better. Look around, friend. Just how deceived can you be? Republican or Democrat. God, you'll never find in the New or Old Testament that God says, look to a king to make your life better. Or maybe I say it a different way. Forgive us. Forgive us for believing that wealth will safeguard our future from instability. That if I could just continue to pack away more in my 401k, it'll all be better. If I could just insulate myself and insulate my family, then I can avoid any market downturn. It can't touch me. No matter how much wealth I can amass. I want to tell you something, friend. I'm telling you as honest and as loving as I know how. You're going to die one day, and when you do, there is nothing about your portfolio that's going to help you because you're not going to have it in your hands. You're going to go out of this world the same way you came into it, naked, naked, naked. Just way more wrinkled than you were the first time you came in. It's a little graphic, but it's true. Forgive us, God, for believing that our wealth can somehow catapult us. Maybe say it a different way. Forgive us, God, for thinking that economic insulation from China is our real problem in this nation. If we could just find a way to keep from building China's middle class and find a way to get all the land back that we sold them, then it'd all be better. In case you didn't know, they own a whole lot of America. That's not our biggest problem. Maybe say it a different way. Forgive us, God, for thinking that a college scholarship means that my kids have worth and significance. That if I could just listen, I got 2 boys. Don't think, I'm not preaching at you. Michelle and I have to filter this stuff all the time in our own home. I can tell you right now, you can get all the college degrees you want. I've got several. I've gone as far as you can go in education, and I'm going to tell you there's one thing that's never done for me. It's never given me a better night's sleep. Not once. Not once. Money can buy you a bed, but it cannot buy you sleep. Education, it's important. I don't think it's not. I'm so thankful for everything that I've ever had in the terms of academics, but I'm going to tell you that is a man-made degree that we often look to say, whoo, man, if my kids could just go to the right school, they will say to the world, I have arrived. And I'm telling you, look around the houses in Franklin, friend. Look around all of your friends in West Haven and Fieldstone Farms, and McKay's Mill and Sullivan Farms. Look around. We are incredibly educated and extremely dysfunctional. It's great, but it ain't going to save us. Forgive us, God. How about this one? If I haven't offended you yet. Forgive us, God, for seeking healing in pills to cure anxiety that we created from overloaded lifestyles. Listen, I believe in medication. I do. I believe in doctors. Some of you, I've got people in my own family that the Lord has used medication to bring for them things that the body just couldn't. I believe in that. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that we chase the hamster wheel and we pursue and we pursue and we pursue and we push, and then we ask doctors for Ambien and things like that to help us sleep better from a lifestyle we created, and we ask God to heal it. I'm saying to you, we need to repent. How about changing our lives and changing our hearts and cleaning out idols instead of looking to a pill? I believe in medication. Don't you walk out of here misquoting me, because I will call you. Because I got podcasts to prove that I didn't say it. It won't be the first time in ClearView. I'm saying to you, friends, so much of what we have problems with, we create. Forgive us, God, for choosing financial slavery to create an image that will convince others that we're successful. And let's just go into monumental debt. That's what he meant when he said Assyria won't save us. That's what he meant. No more will we look to the things we made with our own hands and say, whew, I have finally made something of myself. And what he's saying to the people is, return to me, because did you pick up on what he said there in verse 8? What more have I to do with idols? It is I who answer and look after you. I am the luxuriant cypress. From me comes your fruit. Your harvest is there because I put it there. That's what God is saying. Come back home to that. Come back home to that. See, God has called you to live beyond what you came out of. God has called you to live beyond what you came out of. And so here's what I find, friends, is that every now and then, now stay with me, okay? You've been doing good so far. I can tell it in your eyes. Either you're just mad or something, but you're with me today, and that's a good thing. Maybe because you just don't want to go outside because of the rain. I'll take it. Either way. Stay with me, because I want to give you some hope. You see, every now and then, across the landscape of human history, there's a group of people. The country's never the same. The location's never the same. But every now and then, across the landscape of human history, there's a group of people, usually small, that say, I want to go up the mountain. I want to go up the mountain. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You ever been sick and tired of being sick and tired? I have, many times. Sick and tired of being sick and tired about something. See, every now and then there's a group of people, and it's usually small, and they say, hey, God, we're going to come home, and we're going to empty ourselves. Because the path to freedom, friend, listen to me now. Listen to me. The path to freedom, it starts with emptying. It starts with coming to the end of yourself. It starts with repenting. And not repenting over some drug addiction or repenting over some wild and crazy sex life. It doesn't stop from that. No, it starts with repenting of trying to do for yourself what only God can do. I'll give you some examples. They're usually small. Duncan Campbell. Duncan Campbell was a man that came to a group of islands in Scotland because two old blind women had begun asking God to pour out His Spirit on the Hebrides Islands. You ever heard of Harris tweed? Like, don't wear it unless it's really cold. Harris tweed comes from the Harris Islands. I've got some. I can only wear it like 2 days a year because it's like legit wool. It's on the Outer Banks of Scotland. And these two blind women have been asking God to pour out His Spirit, and God did. And the story goes that for months and months on end, people would get up in the middle of the night and just come to church. They would literally be woken up at 1, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and they would this was before the internet, this was before, I think, even electricity. And they would just come to church, and what was so weird is when they got here, other people had gotten up too. And they would fall on their face before God. There were stories of farmers plowing fields, and the Spirit would speak to them and say, repent. And they would. It started small. There's people like D.L. Moody, who in the 1850s, Dwight Moody began preaching in Chicago, and he began preaching and preaching and preaching, and a revival broke out in the 1850s that changed the landscape of America. Every now and then, a small group of people decide to go to higher ground. Men like William J. Seymour, a black preacher. I love this story. He went to pastor a church in the L.A. area in the early 1900s. And after 2 weeks of being their pastor, they didn't like his preaching anymore. And so a woman and another man that kind of ran the church padlocked the front door. That's when they're not even trying to be secretive about it, right? We don't like you. So you know what William J. Seymour did? He found an old abandoned storefront, kind of a hollowed out barn, and started a prayer meeting. And from that came the Azusa Street revival that changed the face of our nation. You can't padlock that. He did what he knew to do. They don't have to like my preaching. I'll pray them right out of there. He wouldn't be the first preacher. Every now and then a group of people decide that there's another life. See, there's another life if you want it. And Keys to Freedom isn't magic, but it is a tool. It's a pathway to get there. Every now and then a group of people decide they want more. You see, you get as much of God as you want. There was a time where Henry Blackaby was teaching a group of students in 1995, January of 1995. And many of you have never heard that name. A few of you have heard it and you don't know where you heard it. He was the man that wrote Experiencing God. It changed churches. I got to be a part of that. And when Henry wrote that study, nobody knew what God was about to do with it, but it changed the course of American Christianity. It really did. Henry was preaching at Howard Payne University in Texas, and he was preaching, and then later on that week at a church in Brownwood, Texas, where John Avant was the pastor. John went to the same seminary I did. And John was preaching a sermon, and at the end of a sermon, a student named Chris Robertson came down the aisle. Nothing new. John had seen that before. But the student went up to the pastor and he said, "Pastor, can I speak to the congregation?" Okay, now we're in different territory. Right? I mean, I honestly don't know if I'd let you do that or not. I mean, I'd have to know you really well. But John did. He stood aside, and I'm going to tell you, when I read that story again, you put yourself in John's shoes and you're like, "Oh God, please let this be good. Please let this be good." And the student got up. This is what Chris read. He read Joel chapter 2. "This is why the Lord says, turn to me now while there is time. Give me your hearts. Come to me with fasting, weeping, and mourning." And so Chris began to confess in front of his church that he had been lazy with God and apathetic with God. Oh, he wasn't locked in some porn struggle, or he wasn't drinking heavily. No, he was brokenhearted over the distance between him and God. And he began crying. And he stepped down, and John thought it was over, and a lady stood up, an older lady, and she walked up to the microphone, and she began to tell the congregation, openly confessing her bad attitude and the things and the gap between her and God. And one by one by one, they just kept coming. For hours and hours. And from that came the Brownwood Revival. So much so that the very next week, I was about to go to Southwestern that fall in August, and I remember running into my buddy Drew on the campus at University of North Alabama that January, and Drew said, "Hey, did you hear what happened today at Chapel in Southwestern?" I said, "No, I didn't." He said, "They canceled classes." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Some student comes down because, see, what happened in Brownwood had hopped over to the seminary, and so it jumped, and like a flame does. It hopped a canyon, and it went and it began permeating other churches in the area, and it landed at Southwestern that day. And that student got up and shouted." Now, let me tell you, if you don't believe there's a God in Israel, friend, let me tell you something. There is nothing that happens in the chapel at Southwestern Seminary that is not scripted days in advance. They do not deviate from the scorecard, ever. Ever. They plan, at least, I can't imagine it's changed. There is nothing spontaneous about that. So Dr. Hemphill let this student begin to confess, and then something strange happened. A professor got up, and he walked to the microphone, and he began to confess arrogance and pride. And for hours and hours and hours, they just kept coming, and they just kept confessing. And the thing that Duncan Campbell has in common with Dwight Moody, that has in common with William Seymour and Azusa Street, that has in common with John Avant and Henry Blackaby, there's one common denominator among every single revival and awakening that's ever happened in human history. They all have different outcomes. They all spawn different movements, but they all start with the same thing: repentance. Coming to God and saying, "I want to go to higher ground. Hey, God, I'm tired of stale. I want fresh oil and new wine that you talk about. Hey, God, I'm tired of what's being offered in my own heart. And I'm not going to blame student ministry for what my kids aren't getting. I'm not going to blame my marriage and all that I should be getting from the pulpit. I'm not going to blame my lack of financial strength on my job or my boss or my CEO who won't give me a raise. I'm not going to stop blaming anybody and everybody for my spiritual condition. God, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. And I'm going to ask you to give me what nobody else can give me, and that is fresh oil and new wine, birthed out of truth. You see, that's what Keys to Freedom is about. Keys to Freedom is about you going to the root system and being healed. What did Jesus say? You will know the doctrine, and the doctrine will make you free. No, he didn't say that. You'll get better at church, and the church will make you free. He didn't say that. You'll know what? The truth. See, truth is the healing agent. But you don't get truth unless you're honest. So where do I start? That's the big question. Where do I start? Because see, your behaviors and your beliefs all come from a root system. So what we're going to be doing today, in just a minute, we're going to have an altar call. And in just a minute, here's what we're going to start doing today. We're going to start asking God for honesty. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to pray. Where do I start, Jason? In my marriage. I'm 61 years old, and I'm stale, and I don't want to tell anybody. Where do I start? We're going to pray for honesty with God. Hey, listen to me, friend. Listen to me. As loving as I know how to tell you, and as deep as I know how to tell you, there is a different life out there for you if you will empty yourself. There is a different life. There is authority and power and victory and complete peace that passes anything that you could imagine. It is all there for you, but it will not start. It will not start. It will not come. You will not experience it if you hold on to your toxic obsession with your image. and how you look in front of other people and what other people might say to you. This morning as we were worshiping, I had this image in my mind of King David. This man of prominence, the king of Israel, and he led the dancing party in his underwear. I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying, that was an amazing thought to me that guy would become so unhinged and desperate for the favor of God that he really didn't care. By the way, his wife yelled at him for it, but he didn't care. He didn't care. Let me tell you, the path to filling starts with emptying. The path to filling starts with emptying. There is a better life available to you far beyond religion. Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary, and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." That is a promise from the man that came out of the grave.
You know, you often don't think about sharing something with somebody like a tweet or an email or sending them a sermon or sending them a podcast. You don't often think of that as missions, but it is. It's not that you have to send it to the whole world or post every single thing we do at ClearView on your feed. But if you've heard a sermon or if you've listened to a podcast, think through your life. I mean, God, who needs to hear this? Sometimes it doesn't need to go on your Facebook page. Sometimes it needs to go on your Twitter. But sometimes just a simple text to one person can make all the difference in the world. Is sending them the Word of God in real time. Share it. You'd be surprised how far it goes.